Thank you.
Take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nico, and thank you all for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here despite the weather, but Boston weather wasn't that nice either. So I'm going to present today something that we're working with. I have a number of colleagues that have been helping me doing this research, especially Manuel Cebrian, my student Giovanna Militello, and also lately Cesar Hidalgo is working with us at the MIT. Let me start with a question I'm going to ask you and I'm going to try to actually give you some hints about this question, but I'm going to ask you, and keep in mind this question because this is the thing that we are going to try to answer in this talk. Think about a partner or a friend that you have in which you have a strong relationship with him or her. Okay? And by a strong relationship means that you communicate with him or her, for example, more than once a day. Okay, this is like a strong relationship. And now think about how you met her or him. Probably it was the place where you work. Probably someone else introduced you to this person, or probably it was just, I don't know, some hobby that you have and you end up in a group. So let me show you. And what I'm trying to show you is how this strong link was created. And this talk is about trying to find what are the cues, what are the fingerprints of that strong relationship, and if there was any of those fingerprints in the social network we live today. Okay. So my motivation is about this. It's about all of us are surrounded by weak and strong links. What are weak links or strong links? Strong links, I mean, there are very lousy definitions of what a strong link. You can say, for example, that a strong link is someone which is like a family or some close friend or some colleagues. And weak links are acquaintances, people you, I don't know, talk every now and then, people that you, for example, met online. Even people say that weak links are all the people that you met on Facebook or something like that, because most of them are just someone that you met at some point in your life and you're not talking anyway. I will say that if you look for weak links in Google for strong links, I will say the ratio of papers published in weak links to strong links is 10:1. There has been an enormous interest in dealing with weak links. And there's been a lot of literature about what are the importance of weak links in processes, for example, like finding new opportunities. The famous paper by Granovetter is about this. It's about that weak links can introduce you to someone that is working in another company and can eventually potentially give you another job opportunity. But also to access information. Weak links are the people that you're closely connected to that can be living in another community, or have another political party preference or something like that, that can actually introduce you to a new subject of information. That's good. Having weak links help you in your life, but most of the processes in your life have to do with strong links. For example, cooperation. There's a recent paper by the group by Novak and collaborators that showed that cooperation is actually favored by strong links, and having strong links around us favors this cooperation and can actually promote cooperation in communities and groups. Trust. Most of the things you do in your life, when you ask for trust, when you actually have a relationship, you believe in the other party, is built on the strength of the tie. Okay, so trust is actually correlated with the strength. There's a very recent paper by Brian Nussey and collaborators that I like, which is that when people are facing situations of uncertainty, you end up talking to strong ties, not to weak ties. You actually come back to your family, to your close friends, etc. So strong ties are very important in uncertainty situations. Decision making. Most of the viral marketing campaigns are based on the fact that you communicate with your strong ties. Okay, you are not gonna follow a recommendation of someone you pass by in the street. Okay, you ask your friends, you ask your colleagues, your family, etc. Think about the last time you bought a computer and who was the one that you recommended you this computer, this model of phone. And finally, communities. As you might know, most of our communities, of our groups, are based on embeddedness, on the fact that we live around these strong ties which are embedded in our social structure. So strong ties are really important in our life for many processes. But unfortunately, if you go to the literature, there are not many investigations about how these strong ties are formed. How do you form a strong tie, apart from family? I mean, you are the son of someone, obviously. This is very obviously, this is your family, you're a brother or a sister of someone. How do you form strong ties? How do you create those strong ties in your life? You might think that this problem is very similar to link prediction, okay? So when two people are going to communicate, okay, this is the problem of link prediction. For example, this red node in this social network, these are relationships between them. We can predict when if these people are going to talk in the future. This is what is called the link prediction. But this talk is not about that, because there has been many literature about that. This talk is about, I don't want to predict that two people are going to communicate. I want to predict that you are going to have a very strong relationship, because this is what matters to me, okay? And what matters to some of the processes that I was talking about. Okay? Also, there is a lot of literature about what happens around a strong tie. Okay? Strong ties don't appear in social networks in random places. They appear in places that are between people that have very large similarity. And by similarity, I mean geographical similarity. There could be demographical similarity. It could be organizational similarity, that most people belong to the same department, for example. It can be topical similarity, they share the same interest, or it can be the famous paper by Granovetter, which is the structural similarity. So strong ties are surrounded by common neighbors. Okay? That's the Granovetter hypothesis, that weak ties are not surrounded by common neighbors, but the strong ties are embedded, let's say, and surrounded by common neighbors. But this is just telling us what is the social structure or demographic structure or geographical structure around existing strong ties. But it doesn't tell us anything about what was before the strong tie was formed. There was geographical similarity, there was embeddedness. What happens first? You embed the strong ties, and then the tie becomes strong, or is the other way around? So this problem of finding which are the features in our network, in our geographical properties, in our topical properties, etc., that tell us whether a link is going to be in the future strong, is important for applications, obviously. So try to imagine, I mean, what are the typical industry in which this will have an application? If I can predict that two people are going to be best friends. Dating, of course, online dating. If I can predict that, I'm going to say I didn't succeed, so now you have the answer that you are not going to be able to predict that, okay? But not only for applications, but also theoretically, we want to understand, for example, what was the origin of Granovetter hypothesis. What comes first? What do you think? You meet someone, you create a strong relationship with him or her, and then you surround this relationship by embeddedness, by common friends, or is the other way around? You are meeting people and creating, let's say, like a network structure around this potential link, and that will become stronger. Think about this partner, my question at the beginning of the talk. What was your situation? You first met the person and then you meet friends, or you have this social structure around it, and then you end up being good friends with that person. Okay, well, I'm going to show you what we found in our data. By the way, this is a figure. There's a very, very, very famous paper by Rosenfeld and Thomas that could tell you something about how people meet and how people create strong links. This is a very special strong link, which is partnership. I mean, the partner or spouse that you have, how many people meet by year, how many people meet their significant other or the partner. And you can see, for example, this line here, this blue line here is by a common friend. Okay? So less than 40% of the marriages or the unions in this country are formed by someone you met through another friend. And there's this thing that is happening here. This is online. This red line here is online. This is for heterosexual couples, and this is for same-sex couples. You can see, for example, for same-sex couples, around 70% of the couples nowadays are formed online. Okay, and about 20% in heterosexual couples are formed online. What does it mean is that despite there has been an enormous literature about the triadic closure and the fact that the common friends matter, etc., there's a lot of people that made the significant other by other methods, not by the social structure. Okay? Good. So let me say a little bit something about, what we want to know is how people form these strong ties. But let me step back a little bit and show you some research that we did about how people actually forming and destroying links. So if you go, I always tell this thing, if you go to your mobile phone application, the contacts application, and if you browse through it, you will find, I don't know, typical size of the contact is 200 people. You will find people there that say, I haven't talked to this person for ages, and I still have it in my contact. So that is what is happening, that we are creating and destroying a lot of links in our daily life. And I'm going to show you that we don't do this randomly. There is a specific strategy to do that. And this is going to impact the way we create the strong links. So the data that we have is massive. We have CDRs, which are called detailed records. Basically, this is basically phone calls. We don't have tests. And we have a lot around, the good thing is that we have probably the largest in time data set or CDR data set out there. We have not 12 people, so this is a mistake. This is 12 million people. 12 people, and we have about 2 billion calls and around 58 million ties. What I mean by tie varies. I mean, it could be different definitions, but for us, a tie is when two people communicate between them and we have calls in both directions. So there's at least some degree of reciprocity in the calls, okay? We have only used people that are present throughout the 18 months, and we also have gender allocation only for 6 million people, which are randomly selected from these 12 million people that we had there. So what we tried to investigate was how these people actually create and destroy links in this communication database, okay? You might say that these are not the social, let's say, ties, but it is a good proxy for the communication ties are a good proxy for social ties. And there's enormous literature also about that. The first thing that we see in our database is the Granovetter hypothesis. That the strong ties, and by strength I mean the number of calls that people between two persons per day are, first of all, they are very heterogeneous. There are some people that are making 10 calls per day between themselves. There are some people that are making just one call every 100 days. Okay? So it's very heterogeneous. But the first thing that we see is that there is a strong relationship between the number of common neighbors, which is this axis. It's actually normalized. It's called the overlap. This is a topological overlap. There's a strong correlation between the topological overlap and the strength of the tie. Okay? And this is this line here. Okay? So the stronger the relationship is, I mean, the larger the number of calls between people, the larger the number of common neighbors they have. Okay. By the way, this red line here is the one that you get in our network by shuffling the weights, shuffling the W's ij, just to see that there is no effect of having power loss or having some statistical bias here. Okay. So you can see clearly here that people that have strong links, this is actually average, an average, have actually more common neighbors, and that's the Granovetter hypothesis. So strong links are embedded into social networks. By the way, this is not a new finding because O'Neill and collaborators find the same thing for another CDR and another country, at another exactly time in another different time window. Okay, well, this is okay. Just to show you that we have strong links and we have Granovetter hypothesis in our data set. The next thing we did was, okay, what we are going to do now is to identify when two people start a relationship, and that is very tricky because in our data we don't have specific information about when people start a relationship. For example, in Facebook, you have when two people friend each other. And also you have data about when they have friend each other, when they block each other, etc. But here we don't have that, okay? And actually, this problem is a problem you can find in most of the activity-based, let's say, data sets, like communication data sets, instant messaging, etc. You don't have information about when people start friendships. So what we did was the following. Since we don't have those events when people create and destroy links, let's split our time interval into 3 parts, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk only about this part in the middle, okay? So this is, for example, the communication between two people, and these vertical lines are basically calls between themselves. So there's a call at this time, another call, etc. There's a time window here in which they then talk to each other, etc. But that's it. I'm going to say that this link decays, is destroyed if there is no calls in this third buffer period. And I'm going to say that this link, for example, was created here if there is no call in this buffer first period. Of course, you can say, well, this is like a functional definition of the creation and destruction of links. But then, I mean, you can tell me the usual joke that I hear is that I call my aunt every Christmas. That doesn't mean that it's not my aunt anymore. Yes, you're right. In our database, we saw that there are people that have inter-event times of more than 7 months, which is this period in the middle. And this is about 3% of our ties have inter-event times which are bigger than 6 months. So our mistake, our error, our statistical error that we are going to have to deal with is 3%. Because we know that this is the let's say the misclassification that we're going to have in our database is 3%. Okay. One note for all of you that are dealing with data, and data which is based on activity. You don't have metadata about when, for example, links were created or destroyed, is that in order to do this, and in order to assess that a link is created and destroyed, you need an observation period which is much larger than the inter-event period, of course. Otherwise, if you take 1 second, there will be no calls, mostly, okay? If you take 1 month, some of the links will be revealed. If you take 6 months, more of them will be revealed, okay? Not only you have to get a time window which is bigger than the inter-event, but also, since communication of humans is bursty, you have to get that this is bigger, much bigger than the statistical, sorry, the variance of the inter-event time. That's as a large. So typically, we have estimated that you have to get data sets which are 6 months longer or even 1 year longer to get this. Okay? Otherwise, you are missing most of the links. I've seen a lot of papers with just 1 month of CDR data. They're missing probably 60% of the links by just analyzing 1 month of data. Okay? Good, just a technicality. Okay, so the first thing that we did is the following. I take a subject, I take an individual, and I count the number of times, that the individual create a link or destroy a link. Okay, this is very simple. In 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, you will have like you create 20 links and you destroy, I don't know, 20 links. Then I create 2 time series. This time series here is basically the number of links a person is creating, cumulative. Okay, so every time you see a jump here, is basically that this guy, for example, created 1, 2, okay, another 1, etc. And this line here is also cumulative, the number of links that this guy destroyed. So he destroyed 1 here, another 1 here, another 1 here. Well, doesn't matter the details here. What you can see is actually that the rate at which this person is creating links looks pretty similar to the rate at which this person is destroying links. Okay, it's very similar. And that is not an outlier in our database. 90%, 95% of the people in our database create and destroy links at the same rate, which means that all these people have a constant number of links per unit time. Okay, what does it mean is that, for example, you have a guy that have 5 people. If you meet someone has to go. Okay? Because each of us has a constant capacity to maintain social relationships. So every time you meet another person, someone has to go. Okay? Especially, I will show you with the strong ties. Okay. So the capacity is conserved. Okay. What does it mean is that we can have very different animals regarding the social strategies in our data set. We have what we call explorers, and we have what we call keepers. What is this keeper and explorer? If you put the data together, you aggregate the data, these people will have connectivity of 27. They will talk to 27 different people, but they are very different. This person is constantly creating and destroying links. It's only maintaining 4 links at a time, only 4 links. By removing and shuffling all these 4 links, okay, and creating and destroying links, he's able to talk to 27 people. Okay? While this other guy is a keeper. He's not creating and destroying a lot of links, he's just maintaining these 27. If you put the data together, you aggregate the data, these people will look similar. They will have connectivity of 27, but they're very different. They are very different the way, I'm going to show you a little bit why we believe is different. They are very different with regard to this dynamical property. And they have very different capacity and activity, okay? Questions about this? I don't know if you can interrupt me through the talk, but if, well, I mean, it's a continuous. So we don't have like a bimodal, let's say, distribution of people being explorers and keepers. So we have like a continuum from explorers to keepers, and these are the 2 streams, let's say, of this. So the way we don't have an actual definition of what is the threshold for that because it's continuum. But the way we did it in our paper is just putting people on one side or the other. Okay? But these are the two extremes case. The, the capacity, as in most of these databases, is actually power law. Well, power law, heavy tail distributed. Okay, I wouldn't. Power law is a strong word. I will say a heavy tail distributed. Okay, and we have people that have large capacity, large connectivity. There are people that have very small capacity, like this guy. Okay. The interesting thing that we find, okay, we have this capacity and this. Oh, sorry, Brian. Yeah.
City. Depends on what age you're at. You're only looking at whole data, texting, and other forms of communication. But there could be a whole lot of other things going on in the background. How do you deal with all of that missing?
Okay, that's a very good question. I mean, in all these databases, and I started with that. So we are just observing the communication, this communication channel. We don't have multimodality of all the communication channels. Even though, I mean, and still we are striving to find what people have these different strategies. It could be a channel strategy, like I just use the mobile phone to meet new people, for example, and then you are exploring that one, and then you are keeper in our relationship. We don't know that, but what we see is that people, at least for the time window that we saw, is that people are constantly having this strategy. They don't change it, at least for 1 year. Okay, at least for 1 year. So the following transparencies I'm going to explain a little bit, although we don't have a final answer, and I would love to know your ideas about how to get this. We don't know why people choose to be in this particular channel, explorers or keepers, or in other channels. I'm going to show you, for example, that we did also for social trading. And in social trading, people are also keepers and explorers. We don't know why. Okay, we don't know why they choose this strategy, but we see consistently that they have this strategy for a long time. Okay. That's right. It could be. Yeah. I would love to see that. I would love to see that. I mean, we don't have the data to analyze that, and I would love to see if people in different contexts can be different in the strategies. So what I'm saying is that our research is basically showing that they have this strategy. Okay, and now the following three transparencies are what are our efforts nowadays to analyze what are what is triggering that you behave in a particular channel like an explorer or a keeper. Okay. And that's the only thing that I can say so far. But I would love to know if you have an idea of data set in which you can actually test this, that you are different in different channels, or that people that have different, for example, tasks in departments, for example. I can imagine that people that have different tasks, or one thing that we proposed to the mobile phone company was that, for example, people that move from one place to another, probably they are more explorers at the beginning because they have to explore and meet new people, but we don't have the data about people changing locations in the data set. So there's a number of ideas that we try, but I would like to learn other ideas you will have about testing whether this is universal across channels and universal across contexts. Okay. You want to get home?
For a ride, couldn't be searching around. I don't know if you've got battery for it, but that might be
No.
an interesting way to look at this to see are people more conservative battery flow. That might be a way of really know.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not showing this research, but we found, for example, that people in small villages are more explorers, let's say, than people in larger cities. So this is on the same line that you were suggesting, that context matters. So people are more keepers in small. They look more like this guy in small villages than this guy. We don't know. I mean, it's just this is what we found. Okay. Okay. So one of the things that we found, for example, is once again, as Brian was saying, is that people of different gender, I mean, of different age, have different, let's say, explorer keeper ratio. Okay. So this is the average. If this dot, this is average for a particular demographic group. This is, for example, for females of 64 to 66 years old. Okay. Now you can see that throughout I mean, this is actually a snapshot of our data set, so we don't have trajectories of people. But if you believe that the people are representative of potential trajectory and their lives, then you see that women, for example, immediately jump to this area, which is the adult. They are 18. Okay? While males, for example, they just wandering around the explorer parts, and then they up when they are 60. So they behave very differently. Females and males behave very differently. Actually, you don't believe this data, you can do it on your own. You can download your Gmail. I did that. I downloaded all my Gmail for 4 years. This is very easy. The headers of the metadata of the Gmail is very easy to download. And then what you can do is to plot. This is the ID for each of the persons that I send an email and I got an email back. It's very lousy definition of what is a tie. And then you can see, for example, that in this point I was actually mailing 1.1 persons per day, new persons per day. Okay, new persons per day. And suddenly I changed. So this is 4 years of my, let's say, email data. Sorry, 3.5 years. And then suddenly I changed my rate. I mean, so I was clearly an explorer here, and I became less explorer here. Okay, and can you imagine what happened here in my life? Of course, I mean, there's so many things that you can learn here. This is my wife. Okay? As it should be. This is my wife. Can you imagine what happened here? Okay, I go the tenure track. Okay, so this is what is happening. Yeah, so I become less. So this is showing you that there's been a number of things, and this is just an example, but I agree with you that context can transform the way you behave. The only thing we are saying is that at least for the 1 year that we have, people behave constantly. Okay, but there are changes in life, major changes in life that can change this thing. Okay. The other thing that we found is that, okay, you can be a keeper and explorer, but what is the strength of these ties that you create and destroy? Most of the ties that you create and destroy in your life are weak, or these people create and destroy are weak. Okay? This is the duration of the ties as a function of the number of calls per day in that tie. And as you can see, this is basically the limit of our time window. This is 18 months. Most of the ties which are very strong, they have been there forever. Okay? And most of the links that you create, these links that you create and destroy, are very, very weak. Okay? Are weak. So most of the things that you see in this animation, I mean, most of the things that happen in this animation, creating the strong links, are weak links. Okay? So this is not going to tell you anything about the strong links. Strong links are created rarely, but where are they created? So this is the second part of our, by the way, answering Brian's question is, why do you choose to be explorer and a keeper? So we don't know that, but we try to answer that question through a very indirect exercise, which is the following. So we did information diffusion, typical information diffusion process in the network, mechanically. I mean, we don't know how information is diffused in the network. What we did is that whenever two people talk about have a phone call, we just infected the other party. Okay, some biological inspired kind of information diffusion process. Okay? Our question was, maybe the explorers, they have an advantage of, because they are creating and destroying links, they have an advantage of getting the information faster if you propagate this information in the network. Or maybe the keepers are the ones who have this advantage. What do you think? The keepers or the explorers will get information faster. So what we did was the following. We told this guy something, okay, and we used the call data set to mimic information propagation in the network, and then we measure when this guy got the information. And then what we did is that, okay, this is explorer and a keeper, and depending on whether it's a spreader or keeper, whether it receives the information faster or later. What do you think? This is just a pure mechanical process, just to sample. Basically, what we're trying to do here is just to see if the explorers and keepers are in special places in the network. Okay, but we don't know anything about the information diffusion, the actual information diffusion in the process, okay? Because we don't have information about the content. No, no. We just put in a specific thing. We just infecting this person, and this person, whenever he calls or she calls someone, is passing the information to the person. It's a pure SI model running on top of the network. Okay, that's right. That's right. So we found that the shortest path basically of every person here to any potential source is the distance to it. And what we found is that actually keepers receive the information faster. So the people that maintain relationships open, because there is a trade-off. You can be in conference 364 days per year, okay? You don't understand what is happening in your department. You have to come back to the department and talk to the people in your department, okay? And when the information comes to the department, you will learn what is happening. Okay? So there is a trade-off. If you keep creating and destroying links, what is going to happen is that when the information gets to one of your, let's say, neighbors, you have already destroyed the links. But when the information comes to you, okay? It's not only the shortest path; it's actually the causal shortest path what matters, okay? Because you have creation and destruction of links. This is a temporal network. Okay? If you remember this picture, let me put it away. The effective number of links that this guy has is 4. Every time the information gets to the neighborhood, this guy has 4, while this has 24. So controlling for social connectivity, by the 27, this guy will get information. That's right. It's actually it's a trade-off. It's at least for this simple information propagation, let's say, a model that we have, because and information doesn't propagate like this simple model. We haven't done that. Yeah, that's a very good question. We haven't done that. Yeah. But what we are trying to show here is that by controlling the capacity, so this is controlling by the connectivity, which is what typically people do in this kind of data sets, that connectivity is what matters. What we are trying to see here is precisely that connectivity, depending on whether you're a explorer or a keeper, matters a lot. Okay. Okay, let me rush through the last part. We do not have definite answers about what is the importance of the context in the social capacity. But what we did is, okay, let's jump to another completely different data set. This is a data set which is social trading. I don't know if you are aware of this social trading platform. It's called eToro. Basically, what is a social trading platform? Basically, what you have is you put your money instead of stocks, you put your money on people. So if for example, if I like how Heijin is actually trading, instead of trading in the stocks that Heijin is trading, I'm trading on her. I put my money on her. Okay, so I follow her, let's say. Okay, so what happens is at the end of the day, there's a number of people that I follow, and my money is actually shared between the people that I follow, and they're trading my money. I'm trading on their behalf, let's say. Okay, something like that. Okay, what we found is once again that people have constant capacity. People are actually following and unfollowing people in this social trading platform, but most of the people have a constant capacity, which means that if they create another people they follow, they destroy a old one. Okay, and actually some people do this per hour. I mean, like this is trading, so people are actually investing in trading, and this is actually the network. Each of these points is actually a trader in the network in the social platform. And a link is that this guy is following this guy. I remove the arrows because this is going to be very cumbersome. And this is what happens. This is actually this is 6 months of data. The colors, the green color here is people which are actually having a positive performance. Positive performance means you're getting money back. You're getting some money. And these red ones are actually people that are losing money. Okay? You can clearly see that there are some people that are winning, okay, getting money, and there are a lot of followers which are actually grouping together with this person because they are losing money. But what are these guys doing? This guy's losing money. Come on. I don't know. I mean, this is a mysterious thing for me. I mean, I guess the eToro social platform. Actually, we are in contact with them and trying to develop bots in this platform that can explain us, can help this guy. These guys here, they need help. They're for sure. Okay, but that's another story. So what we found is that we don't know why people choose to be explorer or keeper in this platform. But what we can see is whether by being explorer or being keeper, you have a positive performance or not. And what we saw is that this is our exploration index. So being in that size means that you're an explorer. Being this size means you're a keeper. So in this specific platform, we found that this is actually the zero average ROI, return of investment. This is basically the percentage of money you get back, the percentage of money you win by putting money in those people. Okay, you see a lot of people are losing money. A lot of people are losing money in these platforms. Okay, but there is a small fraction of them which are winning, and actually all of them are explorers. Okay? Most of them are explorers actually. Okay? So the performance of the people in the platform is actually correlated with being an explorer. You see, for this mechanic model of information, keepers was better. For this specific platform, being an explorer is better. Okay? So we don't know. There might be many reasons behind this behavior. Okay. Okay, so let me come back to the original question of this talk: is where are these strong ties from? We see that the people are creating and destroying links every day. We have a specific, let's say, strategy to do that. Now the question is very simple. I'm gonna keep it very simple. This is actually preliminary research. We are doing this. We haven't still the final form of the paper, but I'm gonna show you what are the preliminary results about this. Very simple. What I'm going to do is the following. I'm gonna take two people. Okay. Two people that form a tie. Okay. I'm gonna describe the strength of the tie by how many times they communicate when they created the link. This is the time in which the link was created. I'm gonna describe this tie by what is the activity 50 days after the link is created. Okay, that will give me an intuition of how strong is the relationship. And I'm gonna ask the following question: can I predict the strength here by looking at the network demographic, geographical properties of the nodes 100 days before? That would be amazing, right? If I can predict the strength of our relationship 100 days before, that would be amazing. What are the features that we are gonna use in this process? Well, we're gonna just use the ones that we have, which are basically network distance. How far is this person in the network from you? It could be, if it's one, then it's already a friend. If it's two, it's a friend of a friend. If it's three, it's a friend of a friend of a friend, etc. Okay. The other thing we are going to use is that they belong to the same community. With this community analysis of 12 million points, 58 million links, it takes some time, but it's doable. Okay, you do community analysis and you say, okay, maybe they're in the same community, they are more likely to form strong relationships, right? Also, the topological overlap. Maybe they have a lot of common friends, the relationship will be stronger. More common friends that they have, they will be stronger. We are also going to use the fact that both of them are explorers. Remember that the definition of explorer, a person that is constantly changing links. Maybe these people that are explorers, as I was telling you, they don't create strong links, they just create weak links. Also the age difference, because there's a lot of research about whether strength is related to age difference between people. People that have similar ages form strong relationships. And also same gender. That depends also on the context, but there has been some literature about whether same gender or different gender create strong relationships. And finally, we also have geographical distance, how far you live in the country, and we are going to use that also. It's a very simple problem. We want to predict how many times you will call someone from observing these two persons 100 days before they start calling. Very simple. Okay? Of course, the links which are created, the links which are already there, and the links which, picking two random people in the network, they have very different features. Okay? This is very, very simple. For example, look about the geographical distance between people which are already talking to themselves. Okay, the typical geographical distance in our network is around 32 kilometers. Okay? The average distance between people talking to themselves is 32 kilometers. If you take two random people in this country, but by the way, it's the UK, okay, it's not Spain, it's the UK, The typical distance is the UK distance. The box is 200 and something kilometers. And the links which are going to be created in the future, this is a typical distance between them. Okay? It's a little bit away from the links which are already present, but it's much below the 200 kilometers between random pairs. Also, the age difference between them is very different from the present links, random people, and the links which are created. The network distance, of course. I mean, we know that. Okay, we know that most of the people we meet are close by in the network. Okay, so this is the next. This is the inverse of the network distance. By the way, this is 1 means that they are already friends. The network distance is 1, and this is the distance between people randomly in the network, which is 9. Okay? And this is the distance between people in the network, which is around 4.5. And also the probability that they are in the same community is very different. So this is random people. The probability that they are in the community is very small. And the probability that they're in a link which is already formed is in the same community is very large. Okay? And then the new links are formed somewhere in between. Okay. So of course, the properties are very different. The question is, okay, if 2 people are closer, or 2 people have an age difference which is smaller, or 2 people are closer in the network, or 2 people have more probability to be in the same community, do they form stronger links? That could be, right? Because these features are very different. So that could be. So we did 2 things. The first thing we did was to create a model. I'm not discussing the details of the model. It's not important which type of model you use. We try many different models, gradient boosting, random forest. But this is a very simple logistic regression, very simple one. It doesn't matter what, because the results are the same. The first thing we tried is whether we can predict that 2 people are going to talk to themselves. Not the strength, but predict. And we run a model, and we get an accuracy of 0.9. Actually, the sensitivity and specificity of the model is also 0.90, which means that we can predict whether 2 people are going to talk or not with 90% accuracy. Okay? And the features which are more relevant is network distance. This is well known. There's a lot of literature about that. Also, that they belong to the same community, and the geographical distance. You might see here that the topological overlap, our Granovetter's, let's say, intuition, has no significant coefficient. And the reason for that is that it's embedded here in network distance. So having common friends gives you network distance too. Okay? There's a correlation between them. We also try to do things more locally, just selecting people that are distance 3 or less, distance 4 or less, doesn't matter. I mean, the amount of information that you get from being the same community, being both explorers, or being at the same age, having the age difference with geographical distance is huge. So you can predict pretty much, by looking at the network today, you can predict pretty much what is going to happen in 100 days. Okay? 90% accuracy. What happened with the strength? What do you think? I can predict. So looking now at the network, can I predict that these links which are going to be formed are going to be strong? There's no information. The models we run have an accuracy of 0.5, at most 0.6. And I remind you that the baseline is 0.5, because we are doing a classification problem. Strong or weak? There is nothing. I mean, the properties like network distance, geographical distance, age difference, etc., which was very relevant, they all of them are gone. I mean, all the information of that is gone. So by being closer in the network, by being geographically closer, by being in the same community, etc., that doesn't determine that you are going to have a strong relationship. It does determine that you are going to talk to someone, but it does not give you information about the strength of the relationship. Not at all. So I can predict, and most of the link recommendation algorithms are based on this. I can predict who you are going to talk to, and not the strength. Okay. So now it's a negative result for us. We couldn't sell this to the online dating people, but it's a good thing for. I mean, if you think about it, is that you can still find friends which are not determined just by where you live, where your friends are now, and your age difference, your age, etc. Okay? Actually, it's a little bit worse, because if you train an algorithm, this algorithm, which is super duper, this is very good algorithm for predicting links. What are the links that are predicting this algorithm? The strong or the weak? What we found is actually this algorithm is biased against the weak ones. So if you build an algorithm to predict link prediction, to predict link formation, you are going to predict the weak links a little bit. It's a little bit biased. This is actually the average of the strength of the ties that we predict, and this is the quantile of this probability that the logistic regression give us. So these are basically the links which are the ones which are going to be formed. They say they have 90% probability to be formed. Okay. You see that the strength of the ties which are predicted to be formed is a little bit smaller than the average of the links which are formed in the network. So if you run an algorithm of this, you are probably biasing the recommendation of friends towards weak links. And I'm not saying that Facebook or any other people are doing this, but if there could be a problem, because if you just run and you believe that people are following algorithms recommendation, there's a small but cumulative, could be huge impact in the strength of the ties that we form nowadays. By the way, let me come back to the original question. What comes first? The strength of the common friends. Okay? Like Granovetter hypothesis was that there was a correlation between the strength of the common friends. What we see is that this is actually the number of calls that the two persons do per day. This is actually different colors are for different, let's say, levels here. Okay, so these are the strong ties and these are the weak ties. And what you can see here is actually very, we see that in a number of data sets also. I'm going to show you also that we did also this for Facebook and email, is that once the link is formed, the strength is immediately set up. Okay? It takes just a couple of days or 3 days to actually for the strength to be set up. Okay? And then it levels off. Of course, after 50 days, there could be many things happening. Okay? It could be that I don't know, it decays and then the tie is destroyed, or it could be go up because of many other reasons. Okay. But what happens with the overlap? Actually, with the overlap, this is what happens. With the overlap, this is for the same colors here. What we see is, apart from this effect, and I'm going to explain in a minute, what we see is that even months after the relationship is formed, you are still creating common friends. Okay? So to answer the question that we have at the beginning of the talk, first is strength, then is embeddedness. Okay? So you don't have any, this is why you don't have any predicting power in the embeddedness, because the embeddedness is created after the strength. Okay? So you cannot predict the strength by looking at the embeddedness. There's a small thing here, which is actually an anti-correlation. So stronger ties are formed in places which have, between people that have no common neighbors. And that is very, I mean, it's very easy to explain, is because you need room to create common friends, right? You need room to create common friends. If you have a lot of common friends already, there's no room to create these common friends, okay? So this is why there's, we call it an anti-Granovetter, let's say at the beginning of, but it's very small and it's not significant for the links which are we want to predict, okay? The other thing you can think is about what happens when the link is destroyed. What happens? What we see, for example, is that actually the strength lasts until the very last minute, okay? The very last, let's say, day. But contrary to what we saw later, I mean, what you see is that the common neighbors disappear first, okay? Then there is a sudden, let's say, decrease when the relationship is stopped. But they, I mean, it slowly decays to the, let's say, the same levels as was before creating the link, okay? So also, common friends, in that case, start to disappear before tie destruction, okay? So here, the strength lasts at the last minute, while you can see there is some intuition that a strong relationship is gonna decay by looking at the common neighbors. And actually, you can run a very nice algorithm to detect when a link is gonna be persistent or not based on this. Okay, so well, good. I'm about to finish. Let me have the outlook of what I talked to you about. The first thing is about the social strategies that every one of us, at least in some context, or at least in one channel, they do have, all of us, we do have a social strategy. And if you want, I can show you, for example, to how to find that in Gmail. It's very simple to find your social strategy, whether you are a keeper or explorer. The problem is that most of the strategy is around creation and destruction of weak links. Okay, there's not much information actually about strong ties, because particularly in the case of embeddedness, because strength comes before social embeddedness. So strength in a tie is created because social embeddedness, and that's the reason why if we want to actually build a strength tie prediction algorithm, it's not going to work. Okay? There's nothing that tell us in the network, tell us that two people are going to have a strength, at least in the variables that we analyze, which are your network geographically, demographically. There's nothing that tell us that two people are going to have a strength. So for me, it's interesting to find that there's a whole industry out there I'm not talking about companies, also about literature industry, I mean, about academic literature, based on creating link prediction algorithms and having the best link prediction algorithms. And all of them are based on the fact that they want to predict when two people are going to talk. We should be caring more about when two people are going to have a strong link, because most of our processes in our daily life are impacted by strong ties. Okay? But there's nothing, there's no information. So for me, it's amazing to see that the same properties that can tell you the network and its geography, that can tell you if you are going to talk to someone, don't carry any information about whether you're going to have a strong link with that person or not. Okay? And with that, I leave it to you on questions. Thank you. Okay, so as I was telling you, so one of the things that we tried with the company, especially, was to try to identify lifetime events. Like, for example, when you're getting married, or when your new son is born, or you know that is born, because those, I think, are going to change the way you behave. I mean, and if we have enough statistical, I mean, if we have enough data, we could probably have a statistical indication that this is what is happening. But we don't have that in our data. So we put all the people together, even the people that within that 6 months period that we were observing, probably they got married, they moved to another city, but we don't have who are they. I mean, so I will say that these are the 5% people that we couldn't say that they have a definite strategy throughout the 6 months. Okay, but but for sure we don't have this context. One of the things that we are doing right now is, okay, one of the things is, since we don't have, we are asking for new data to the telcos company, another telco company, which are going to give us lifetime events. The other thing that we can do is to go to Twitter. The problem with Twitter is that it's very sparse, lousy, there's a lot of noise, but there you can identify lifetime events, for example, like getting unemployed, getting married, having a son. I mean, actually, there's a lot of research on doing that. And by having that, we can establish what is the difference between the behavior before that lifetime event and after that time. But for sure, this thing is going to happen, that people are going to change. I mean, I moved in the last year. I moved up to another place, and I probably, I mean, if I analyze my Gmail right now, you can see that I became an explorer because I moved to another place. Yeah, yeah, you. No, we don't have animal data. It would be, that's a very, actually a very nice. It would be great to have actually have this data, but we don't have this data, and I'm not aware. Well, I can ask my collaborator Dunbar to actually, because they have data, but whether there is data with specific timestamps. Okay, we don't have. The problem with this is that you need, at least with our definition of how a link is created or destroyed, you need a lot of data. You need a lot of interaction. So I don't know if animal data is so has this high resolution that we need in a. I did. It's in the paper. I can see the results. It's not. I mean, the R square is 0.2. It's really, really, not even 0.2. I wish it was 0.2 because I could tell something. I mean, it's 0.0 something. Well, there's this famous gravity law that tells you that the probability that you talk to someone which is a number of kilometers away, it follows 1 over that number of kilometers away square. Okay, so that's basically what happens. I mean, this is not an explanation. This is just, so our data is just a reflection of that, and this is well documented in many social networks. Right.
So,
Mhm.
I know you're calling it
No, I'm calling it communication network.
calling
Yeah.
it a communication method.
Yeah.
So now yeah,
Mhm.
it's a little bit.
Mhm. Mhm.
See each other.
Well,
Right?
you call me more than almost anyone.
Yeah,
From my perspective.
But like there's a lot of people who don't have, they're shown types, right? So we spend a lot of time with that. So like, what I'm trying to get at is do a little bit of balance.
Okay, so obviously there is, with this data, I mean, with any data, any communication data, there is always the problem that we might be observing only what people is doing on the platform, or what people is doing on this communication network. Okay, that's one thing. So, but coming back, so first of all, I mean, the network that we constructed, which is a communication network, has some properties of other social networks, like for example, this Granovetter effect that we see. We are not the first one to observe that. And also this thing has been observed in Facebook, in Twitter, in email,
Let me
etc.
ask you this. People I don't,
That could be.
so like I would expect that you would have correlation.
There is a number of papers that have been studying this.
Yeah.
Okay, so whether there's a famous paper by Dan Gilbert in which they show that, I mean, they ask people questions about the strength. Okay, which is, for example, if you I don't know, if you will give this person $100 as a loan, etc. In external validations of the strength. And then what they did was using the features, for example, of communication of these people in the Facebook platform, and see what are the ones which are related. So there's a huge literature about that. And the feature, the only feature that is most relevant and across all the services is the intensity of the number of times they call it. Of course, you can say, okay, I'm using another channel. That could be, okay? But my understanding is that if you have a strong relationship with someone, you end up calling him or her, okay? I mean, and this is 2009. Now probably you are using texting, or you're using, I don't know, whatever you guys do use now, Messenger or whatever. And my understanding is that by this time, people were using mobile phones and people were communicating with mobile phones. Yeah. And I'm not the only one making this assumption that this is social network, because there has been also a number of studies of communication, say, patterns and social strength. And I can tell you, I mean, we've been doing a lot of research, including your paper, about what is the relationship between strength and other properties, and the unique feature that appears in all the studies and is the most predictive of strength is intensity of communication, intensity of. In that sense, obviously, we don't have another vacillation. What I can show you is that we did this for another channels. Okay, sorry about waiting for this. This is in the paper, because you are not the only one to actually, when I give this talk, oh, you're just using mobile phone data, well, who cares? But what we see, for example, is that we also done this thing for, this is actually Facebook. There's a small data set of Facebook students in New Orleans that you can get out there. This is actually the same thing. This is actually, no, sorry, this is mobile phone network. This is Facebook, and this is email. This is email from, let's go back paper. This is actually in another institution. And what we'll see is the same thing. Strength is set up. I mean, whenever this is Facebook, and this is, sorry, this is Facebook, and this is email. The strength of the relationship is actually set up at the beginning, and the number of neighbors keeps growing after the relationship is set up. So I'm not saying that this is, because there could be a complementarity, okay? And I'm not saying that this is answering fully your question, but is actually getting us a hint that the thing that we observe is not unique to the specific 12 million people that we have in our database. Thank you.